What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Now. Today I want to bring to you the top 10 fantasy closers ever. These guys racked up a bunch of saves over the last 20-odd years. We don't see a lot of old names on this list like we did that ridiculous best pitching of all time list. So if you like what you see today, hit me with a sub, hit me with a like, whatever. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. I'm a guy that jumps right into the content, and so that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's get into it. Okay, so just to give you some frame of reference here, scoring system that we use to do these lists it's a points league, and traditionally you get the 10, well, in our league at least, and some things are different, I'm sure, for yours, but this is what we've used for a long time, so that's what I'll use here. You get 10 points for a win, 10 points for a save, which is quite a lot, 2 for innings pitched, and then you get knocked half a point for hits, walks, or hitting somebody. And then you get -1 for an earned run, and you get only 1 point for a strikeout. So, like I had kind of mentioned, pitchers back in the day in the 1900s, or the 1800s even, they didn't really have this concept of closers. So we're going to see a lot more, not all modern names, but a lot more than we did with the pitching all-time list. So let's jump right in. And to give you another reference, usually relief pitchers in our league get around 580 points a season. The best ones get maybe 610, but a majority of them are more in the low 500s to high, or high 400s and low 500s. Sorry if that was confusing. So just to give you a little reference, just remember, like, the highest number is usually around 610, and so right off the bat we see, a 692 from Craig Kimbrel. Kimbrel, is that really his name? Craig Kimbrel. Sorry. Struggling here, apparently. 2013 was a huge season for him, as we recall. I mean, 9 earned runs all year. That's the thing that I think that we take away the most. He actually didn't have a lot of innings, which didn't lead to a ton of Ks, even though this is a crazy good strikeout per inning ratio. Since he didn't have as many innings, it didn't lead to as many points. Even though almost 700 points is absolutely ridiculous. That was a huge year. So 4 wins on top of that, which it's basically 54 saves in a way. But this earned run average and the strikeout ratio was crazy. And I remember that season. That's really when he kind of busted out into a whole new level. Randy Myers from 1993. So this is kind of when they started actually bringing closers more into these situations. Racked up more saves that year, but here's where the difference is he's got more innings. His strikeout ratio isn't as good, but he did have more innings, more saves, less wins, but it leads to slightly more points. So that was a good season, obviously, and if you remember Randy Myers' name, let me know. It was a little bit before my time, so I'd be curious to know if anybody has any kind of cool stories about him. And same with Dennis Eckersley. The thing that gets him up here in points is the fact that he still had 7 wins. Now, I'd be curious to know, and I'll look this up, if these were blown saves that turned into wins, because that's usually how relievers get these points. But he did rack up 51 saves, and he also has not the greatest strikeout per 9. It's right above 9, and that's good, obviously. But for this list, you'd expect it to be much higher. You'd expect it to be like Kimbrel, not Kimbrel. So 709 points. If you get that out of any closer any year, you are probably going to be competing for that's so many more points, almost 300 more points than a bad closer or one of those late guys that you get. So it's pretty amazing how many points that these guys can rack up. Trevor Hoffman, one of the greatest of all time. We always think of Rivera as the greatest of all time. Hoffman was kind of like, okay, so Rivera to me was like Barry Sanders, where it's like he was actually the most dominant when he was playing, and Emmitt Smith is more like Trevor Hoffman for me, where he was dominant in his way, but he also did it for a very long time. So that's kind of the way I think of Hoffman, but this was his season, his pinnacle. So it's something to keep in mind, really. Again, it's just all about these saves and putting these wins right next to it. These are worth so many points in these points leagues. Again, not the greatest strikeout ratio, but 12 earned runs that year. Wow, look at that. That's pretty amazing. 2 home runs all season long, so he was not blowing a lot of saves. It's pretty amazing. Next is actually John Smoltz. I was surprised to see this name on here because we all think of him as just a starter. And this was at the height of that steroid year. 2001, 2002 was when steroids were absolutely going insane. So to come out and only give up 4 home runs on a season, I know John Smoltz because he was from Detroit, drafted him and then traded him, and then he became huge, right? So I know him as a Detroiter for that perspective, but not many people remember how good of a closer he was here. So this many saves is the top so far. I think probably every single person has that on here. The actual points for saves, could you imagine being in a category league and getting 55 saves from one of your closers? You would win that category every single week. It's pretty amazing. But John Smoltz is the kind of forgotten son that we don't really remember. Next is Eric Gagne. I remember watching him as kind of a kid, a teenager, and he would just come out and it was lights out. The game was over. It was a lot like Rivera. The game was just over when he came out, and he had that really long streak, and it was fun to watch. And you don't really think of closers as fun to watch, but he was kind of, because he had that streak, it was fun to watch. I could probably only name like 4 or 5 closers that were fun to watch. Rivera, Gagne, there's more, obviously, but I always like to watch Todd Jones, but you guys don't probably remember who Todd Jones is. But Gagne was that guy who came out, and it was just fun to watch because he was so lights out. And then here we're talking about that strikeout ratio. This is true dominance at this point. That's an absolutely insane ratio. So that was a lot of fun watching him growing up. Bobby Thigpen, a little bit before my time, but look at so far the number 1 in saves here. Not a strikeout guy, clearly. My guess is that they were starting to use closers a little bit more. I have to look up the year where they really started to drive home closers. But only given 5 home runs a year, not a whole lot of blown saves here. Just an overall great season. 751 points. We were really genuinely at 200 points over some of the top closers in today's game at this point, which is pretty amazing for 1990s. We don't know what closers really are with the analytics and all that stuff. So really cool to see that here. Francisco Rodriguez also played for Detroit late in his career, and I know I'd put him on the list of guys that was really fun to watch when he came in, because it was just like, this game is over, and he put 62 saves. Holy crap, guys. That's just amazing. If you think about 62 saves, the Texas Rangers might not win 62 games this year. The Detroit Tigers might not win 62 games this year. So the fact that not only did he put up 62 saves, I got to look up how many wins LA actually had, because 62 saves in a season is more than teams actually win. So that is a stat to take away. And so far, who we haven't seen yet is Rivera, which is shocking to me. And I don't think he's number 1 either, but I could be misremembering, because we'll see. Edwin Diaz, very recently, and what's funny is after this, he kind of tanked a little bit, and you know what? Besides the insane amount of saves, and not clearly, he probably blew a save at some point, but most closers will blow a save and then get a win, kind of on the backside. Not here, so he's not getting aided by wins. 7 wins here really makes the total go up quick, but no wins here. So where's he getting all these extra points from? It's not through innings pitched necessarily. Boom, strikeouts. Look at that. Almost 30 more than some of these other guys, 40 more than some of these other guys. This was probably one of, if not the most dominant seasons ever in real life, not from a fantasy perspective, because that was just, come on. You're not getting hits off this guy. Number 1, so Rivera did not make the list, that's right, because Eric Gagne had that streak that went from 2002 to 2003. So the streak continued, and eventually did he get through 2003? Somebody will have to remind me. But 55 saves, and this is another one of those. This is where points really, you could have 50 saves like Kimbrel did here, and just not have as many strikeouts and be this low on the list. 134 Ks, 810. You're almost at 300 points better than a pretty average kind of closer today. So, could you imagine having Eric Gagne? If this was an auction league, $100 cap, he'd be getting $8 to $10 almost, don't you think? That's probably too high, but or maybe not. 810 points, 300 better than a pretty good closer. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. This is the top 10 list of closers points ever. I'm really surprised to not see Mariano Rivera on this list. I'm not sure what his greatest season was. My guess is he just didn't have a whole ton of saves, even though he was my Barry Sanders. He was the most dominant guy out there. These guys seem to have strung together like one really good season, whereas Rivera had, a career of really good seasons. It just apparently never hit the top 10. This is also not showing greatness as a closer. This is fantasy sports. This is fantasy related. So you might not see as many. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't have as many innings. I'll have to look. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this, appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.